What are the two most difficult belt ranks to earn in the martial arts? Welcome to Martial Laws, life off the mat, where martial arts lessons translate to everyday life. For those of you who already have martial arts experience, you likely know the answer to this question. The obvious answer is the black belt is one of the most difficult ranks to earn. Why? Because you have to work your way up consistently with discipline through all the earlier belt ranks, right? From white to yellow to orange, etc., etc. And each belt, each rank comes with its own set of, depending on what you study, kata, self-defense techniques, different kinds of strikes, different kinds of kicks. Maybe there's some throws in there. But you have to learn each module, get it down, memorize it, rep it out, and then you can test and then hopefully pass on to the next rank. And then you start all over again with a new set of skills and training that you have to consistently practice. And there's also pressure drills and sparring, hopefully. So, of course, getting to that first degree black belt is a challenging task. But what is the other belt that is the hardest to earn? And you're probably already figuring this out. It's the white belt. What? That doesn't even make sense. Why would the white belt be hard to earn? Because don't you just earn one by walking through the dojo doors or the studio or the school? Don't you get one by just bowing onto the mat? Well, yes and no. It takes a lot of courage to decide, to commit, and to essentially be vulnerable in starting something new, right? Especially if you've never done it before. Let's just pretend you've never done a martial art before. And then one day you decide, I either want to take one up or feel the need to take one up to protect myself or whatever, protect yourself. And you make that decision, and then it's like, okay, now I have to make this commitment. And now it's not just about walking onto the mat once and getting that white belt. You have to show up either every day, every other day, but there's got to be this consistent attendance and consistent practice while you're in class, but also while you're outside of class. It's self-training, right? You have to take what you learn from class and you got to drill it on your own at home too. And maybe you get together with some of your classmates and drill some of this stuff outside of class. So it becomes a real commitment, right? And let's face it, you're putting yourself out there, and sometimes it can be challenging for anyone to put themselves out there and be seen and know that they're doing something that's outside of their comfort zone, right? Anyways, let's give you a little bit of my background, my story. So I started Wing Chun at about 8 years old, I think, just learning from my dad. My dad studied with several really good Wing Chun instructors way back in the day. And I studied with my dad for about 2 years in a row, 2 consecutive years. And really, this is one of my regrets, is that I didn't stick to it and didn't continue learning with my dad. But I was a stubborn little punk of a kid that just didn't have the patience to learn it. But it was being forced to do it, but also I just had other interests. And Wing Chun is, I don't know if you've ever had experience in Wing Chun, but if you haven't, it can be highly structured, highly strict in terms of forms, angles, body mechanics, body positioning, and footwork and stances. And I was just not a patient kid. And I just butted heads with my dad. But it's funny because the stuff that I did learn in those 2 years have stuck with me. It's crazy how much we drilled and repped it out. I did so many repetitions that a lot of that stuff comes out automatically. I am in no way an expert at Wing Chun, but There are just certain basic things like the straight punch and the bong sao, which is a kind of wing block. It comes out naturally when I'm sparring. But yes, didn't really stick with it, and that's a regret of mine. And then over the years, I didn't really do a lot of martial arts, but over the years, I eventually started auditing some classes in schools. I audited Krav Maga when it started to get trendy. That's probably the best way to put that. Probably right around the time J-Lo was in that movie Enough. I never saw the movie, but that was the era of Krav becoming more mainstream, but it's been around. Anyways, I audited a class. I loved it. It was a great, fun class. I didn't join because it was kind of far and it was kind of pricey, and I was young and didn't have a whole lot of money at the time. So I was like, the money that I do have, I need to prioritize. Anyways, I did enjoy it because from my experience with Wing Chun, I was like, I want to take something that doesn't have forms, doesn't have these strict stances and kata for lack of a better term, because in Wing Chun you don't really call it kata. But anyways, and then I still kicked around and I started taking JKD, Bruce Lee's art, from a guy who he had a Jeet Kune Do background. And I took from him for a few months. I was going pretty consistently, and then he ended up closing up shop. I guess it was a side hustle for him, and he went back to school. And so I only had a few months with him, maybe, I don't know, maybe 3 to 6 months. I don't even remember. And so that was that, ended that. At this point, I still didn't rank in anything. And then I was still kind of keeping my eye on Krav Maga because I thought it's cool that you don't have to learn any forms. And I took a Krav Maga gun defense weekend workshop. There's a lot of weekend workshop type of deals out there in various martial arts, and that was one of them. You pay a certain amount and you go for Saturday, Sunday. And it was for charity, so it was for a good cause, Wounded Warrior, or Wounded Warriors. And I learned a little bit of gun defense and stuff, but still was not going to a school regularly. I did try to go back to Wing Chun. I won't name any names, but I went to another Wing Chun instructor, fairly well known, and it just wasn't vibing for me. I felt, no offense to this person, but I felt like the knowledge was being withheld. I wasn't learning fast enough. I felt like it was, instead of wax on, wax off, which is kind of that old school kind of feel where you're just learning one little bit at a time. It was trickling out. The knowledge was trickling out to me so slowly that it was just wax. It wasn't wax on, and we were very far from wax off. We were just at wax. And it was like that for weeks on end. And I started to feel like I was just paying somebody's mortgage rather than actually learning anything. So I know that might be an old school style of teaching, and it probably works if you give it a chance. But yeah, again, going back to patience, right? I didn't have the patience. Also, the vibe wasn't cool. The senior students there were, some of them, not all of them, were just angry little bastards that just, instead of teaching you, they would rip you a new one and not give you the solution to the problem or the obstacle of learning. Instead of teaching you, they would just berate you. And I was like, okay, you're yelling at me about my incorrect stance, but you're not showing me how to correct it. So what's the point if you're just going to stand there and yell at me? So yeah, I bounced because it was like, I don't know how much it was, 100 something a month or something like that. I don't know. Anyways, after that, I kind of gave up on it again. And then eventually I was approaching 40 and I wanted to rank in something before I got too old. I think it was like 39, maybe between 38 and 39. And I walked in and audited a school that actually resonated with me. It turned out to be American Kenpo. The funny thing is I was looking for another Krav school. I was asking around, and a friend of mine from my past, like we were buddies back in elementary school, he messaged me on Facebook and said, hey, you know what? Like, why don't you come check out this place that I'm learning stuff at? They have something similar to Krav. And it wasn't a Krav-based school. It just happened to have Krav as a supplemental kind of learning. So It wasn't necessarily mixed in with the Kenpo, but it was like, it's just, again, taught like a supplemental. So it was almost in a little silo of its own, but you learned it along with Kenpo. There was also a silo for Eskrima, so that was cool too. So I went there. I didn't really know much about American Kenpo, even though it's like, apparently it's like one of the most well-known systems out there. I didn't know this though at the time. Elvis took it and what have you. But yeah, there was some fear of the unknown. I was like, would I like this style? Because I never really heard about it. Would I be capable of doing it now that I was older? That wasn't an issue, but I didn't know. And then I was like, how high do these guys kick? Because I can't kick higher than the tallest poodle. I still can't kick higher than the tallest poodle. But Kenpo doesn't have high kicks, really. It does and it doesn't. You can have them, but they're not a requirement. So anyway, I audited the class, ended up liking the teacher, liked the style. I could tell that he was really good at imparting knowledge and being able to explain techniques in a way that I could follow and actually pick them up, because you got to have a good teacher. I enjoyed the sample of techniques he showed. He demonstrated on me a few times, and I went crashing down to the mat safely, of course. But like the overall vibe of the school was great, and the other students were pretty cool. And again, it also helped that my friend referred me to the school, and he was still an active student and teacher there. But anyways, I still didn't make it back into the school for another 2 weeks to sign up. I had other things to do, and I was trying to decide, okay, what white belt was I going to earn, and am I going to put myself out there and earn it and go out there and commit? So it took me about 4.5 years to earn my first degree black belt in that system. But it only took a single moment to decide to get a white belt. But the lead up to that decision was probably many years in the making, if you think about all the dabbling I did with the Krav and the JKD and Wing Chun. This school also teaches JKD. So I had American Kenpo as the main curriculum, and then I kind of call them supplements. There was Krav. It didn't go by Krav. It went by a different name. And then Eskrima, and then Jeet Kune Do. So all that stuff was included in the package, which was great. So I got a variety in one school. Anyways, once I made the decision, it was probably one of the best things that I could do for myself. I had an increase in confidence. I now know what I'm capable of. My problem-solving skills are through the roof. Staying calm in stressful situations is a great thing, because we did spar, and sparring is really great for that. And then overall, it improved my leadership capabilities. Show me your leadership capabilities, if you know that Bill Hader story with Arnold Schwarzenegger. Anyways, in a sense, this podcast is my new white belt, right? I've been a guest on podcasts before, and I've dabbled in starting one before, but now I'm trying again. Because I kind of gave up on it before, but I'm trying again with a little more structure. And I'm not sure where this white belt of a podcast is going to take me. It's a solo podcast for now. It's also a mini series for now. I might have guests on someday. I might not. I'm not sure. It might stay a mini series, or it might go on indefinitely. We'll see. But the key is, I'm entering the dojo for the first time and stepping onto the mat again, right? Metaphorically. So that's my story. That's why I like to talk about the martial arts. And that's why this podcast is about the martial arts. But it's not really about fighting. This podcast is not about fighting. It's more about, how do you apply what you learn on the mat in the real world? Like a non-violent world of your day job, your office, your corporate job, your relationships with other people. So being human. So my question now to you is, what white belt are you planning on earning next? Maybe you're in the middle of earning a white belt. Or what white belt have you been putting off? And it can be literal, just like starting a new martial art, right? Are you starting a BJJ for the first time, or Muay Thai, or maybe you're going into karate like American Kenpo or Taekwondo, Tang Soo Do, whatever, right? Or it can be metaphorical. Maybe you're starting a new job, a new side hustle, making a career move that's different and new, picking up a new hobby or a skill like painting, a musical instrument, taking up acting. I'm an actor. And I'm an older person. And I know some people that are starting their second act, right? You reach a certain age and you decide to change directions in your profession and you pivot and you start your second act. Or maybe your second act is just plain old retirement and you have a big old set of plans for that. So give it some thought. Whatever white belt might be floating around in your mind and your decision making, I encourage you to take the first step. Who knows? Maybe you'll enjoy it and prosper in it. And in 4.5 years, you'll have a quote unquote black belt in whatever it is you choose to pursue. With that, I say thank you for joining me on this first episode of my podcast. And hope to see you here for the next episode, whatever that might be about. I am still planning that. And before you go, remember, always practice kindness and train for violence. Practice kindness, train for violence. Okay. Take care.